For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and today I'm joined by Andrew Mahler from the Liberty Sentinel. How are you doing this morning, Andrew?
I'm better than I deserve, Michael. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I want to thank you for joining. And for those guys that don't know, you can find Andrew Mahler every Saturday here on Ex-American News, 5 p.m. He has a fantastic show called American Made. You really do a great job like looking back into our history, into our founding, and into those underpinning beliefs, and then tying them to things that we see happening today, or in some cases just educating people on where our country's roots really come from, because I think they're so detached from that reality nowadays.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the show has been a tremendous opportunity and experience, and I'd encourage people to check it out. And yeah, everyone's always talking about the news, right? This is going on, that is going on. But very rarely do we actually talk about the principles, the history, the context surrounding these things. So that's what we try to get behind on the show.
Yeah, I think that's something not enough people really understand, and you do a great job linking those up. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it, because as always, we've got a lot happening this morning. I'm seeing some people report that Trump has invoked the Insurrection Act, but I have not seen that confirmed. But of course, the other big story everybody's talking about this morning is James Comey. Well, as Comey's just show up arraignment set for today, Patel dismisses perp walk talk. And, I think this is a disappointment to a lot of people in the movement, especially after watching Roger Stone and others get drug out of their houses. The fact that they couldn't, apparently they couldn't even get an FBI agent to arrest Comey. They tried to assign somebody to do that, and the person refused. It's ridiculous, and we're going to get more into this with a couple other stories, but if this is still what we're battling within our government, that they still haven't cleaned out this leftist cancer that's been so invasive into every branch, we're really paying the price for it right now. And maybe, it's definitely no excuse, but that may be why we're not seeing more arrests, more indictments, and more things moving forward. All of us are sick of this. There's a lot of these criminals, both within the deep state and other just bad actors within government that need to be charged, need to be tried. They talk a tough game, but this will be the first actual arraignment, I think, of a mouthpiece of the deep state.
Yeah, so, Comey, pleaded not guilty, right? So that's a big headline too, right? So he pleaded not guilty this morning in Virginia. And obviously the context around this is Comey lied to Congress. So this is something that is very significant. This should be like a low-hanging piece of fruit for us, to be able to get Comey and actually get him on the hook for lying to Congress. But I do think that this does illustrate some of the weakness that we see on our side, where the left will go through just every single stop. They'll pull them all out to indict, accuse, perp walk people on our side for not breaking the law. But then when we have opportunities to do the same thing, and again, we don't want to be like, hey, let's look for just criminals on the left. We also want to look for criminals on our side. We want to have that equal sense of justice under the law. But when you have
Yes.
a very obvious situation like James Comey, who is at the deepest levels of our government lying to Congress, this should be an easy one to nail him on the floor. And the fact that we're not pursuing the perp walk, right? That he's just testifying remotely and, all these different things. It does make you wonder why, once we get power, we being the pro-America MAGA group, once we get power, we end up treating these people so nicely. It does make
Yeah.
you wonder why that happens. And it probably shouldn't be that way.
No, it certainly shouldn't. And I agree. I want real justice. I don't want them going after, leftists for petty offenses, the jaywalking ticket or other, ridiculous nonsense. But there's plenty of real crimes to nail them to the wall to. And let's not forget, at this same point in Biden's first term, they had already incarcerated 700 J6 defendants, the bulk of which did not commit any violent acts on January 6th. They essentially were either outside the building or went through on an unguided tour. They didn't destroy we didn't have to hear about Congress wasn't destroyed when they walked in the building. Nothing like that happened. The left pretends this is, the worst thing since 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, but that's clearly not the case. It's not in reality. And with Comey, I still can't believe we've got people in the media out there defending this loser when, he, in his own words, demonstrably committed these crimes. And that's not even to get into any other additional evidence that the Justice Department has. He talked about leaking documents to the media. We know he did it. He confessed on live television. And everybody's pointing to he lied to Congress and making excuses for that. Again, he certainly knows the truth there, too, and his own words betray him. But pretending this guy is somehow a saint and hero of the left and blah, 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 that's all they've got to go with. Now, I hope we can find a fair jury that will actually convict him. But, I don't exactly have high confidence of that either in D.C. after we've seen them drop charges on so many people, for assaulting ICE officers, threatening to kill the president, threatening to kill other people. They gave one lady she was having a bad time in prison, so they let her go back to New York to visit her psychologist. And we're going to talk about this here in a little bit, but yeah, they continue to drop charges on those assaulting ICE officers and others because they're carrying out the left's political will. So when you get these Biden, Obama, Clinton appointed judges, they seem to go through any hoop they can to release these people back out into the public so they can continue to plague humanity with their violence.
Yeah, and first I think it just has to be said, right? Just a little caveat here, right? We're not for political weaponization. We're not going to do what the left does. We're not going to go after people just because they have different political beliefs and all that. But again, this isn't that. This is case closed. Basically, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that James Comey broke the law. So we live in a society that's very optics and aesthetic driven. And the left understands this. That's why they had Trump mugshotted. That's why they took Roger Stone outside of his house in his underwear and had, people in boats behind his house, SWAT inside and outside of the house. Just so unnecessary. When Trump's lawyer, I forget his name, one of his lawyers, he was also mugshotted. They came and pulled him out of his house early in the morning, pulled him out in his underwear, took pictures. These are humiliation tactics. These are warnings. And they know they don't have the juice to get these people, right? They know they don't have the legal standing to get them, but they view the process as the punishment, right? We're going to mugshot you. We're going to do media hits on you. We're going to pull you out of your house at 4 a.m. in your underwear, whatever it is. And yet when it comes to us, we don't play by those same rules. We have people and we know they've committed crimes, and yet we treat them with kid gloves. So not to sound like a broken record, but I do think there could be a PR lesson learned from the law enforcement on the pro-America side where, hey, you know what? When you have somebody who actually has broken the law and they're somebody who we know we can get and we need to get for purposes of justice, it's okay to play the optics card and actually go and perp walk them. That's not wrong. That's not revenge. That's not what's the word the media uses all the time with Trump? It's not vengeance, right?
Yeah, vengeance.
It's just law and order. It's just law and order. So the left
it's justice.
The optics. Yeah, it's justice. It's the left understands the optics of this. The right needs to learn that too.
Exactly. And I do think some of Trump's officials are doing a good job kind of setting the optics. The media is always, apoplectic when they do. But it is something we need to do better with as a whole, messaging especially. But we also have this story. Virginia prosecutor planning to let Letitia James off the hook on mortgage fraud allegations. MSNBC was originally reporting this. It seems to have been confirmed by other outlets and our own DOJ. But again, why do we still have these people there? I mean, I know they're short on lawyers at the Department of Justice right now, that they've had several desperate calls for people that want to actually enforce the law. But again, if you know your organization is infiltrated by these leftists, you cannot allow this to continue, because it's destroying even the illusion of justice. Because if when this goes to trial now, they're almost certainly going to bring this up, that your own attorneys didn't think there was enough here. How could you have brought the case forward? In reality, there's obviously enough to go after Letitia James. I mean, she's prosecuted. I mean, she's already said publicly her defense is basically going to be to plead ignorance, because there is a component of at least one of these laws where you had to be intentionally defrauding the government. Well, she's prosecuted several of these cases herself. So the same statutes within New York. So she knows exactly what went on. She knows how she abused existing law in order to benefit herself. Again, it's plain as day, and we're not talking about one incident either. We're talking about multiple. So maybe she could pretend ignorance on one of those issues. I don't know. We'll give her, say, the one with the putting she had 5 units in an apartment building but only declared 4. Again, that's a willful act. You had to have done that. But her not knowing, she could pretend not to know that there was an insurance benefit and tax benefits to that. But all of us know that isn't the case.
There's a saying that used to be very popular. It still comes up now and then. Rules for me, not for thee, right? This is something that we see at the upper echelons of our politics, which I think has led to a lot of apathy and a lot of disengagement from people, because they see situations like this and they're like, heck, if I, Andrew Mueller, or you, Mike, did this, they would come after us, they being the government, with absolutely no mercy. It wouldn't make a headline. It wouldn't be a blip on the radar. We committed mortgage fraud. We're going to be punished severely. And yet you have our leaders, who should arguably be held to a higher standard, who do the same things or worse because they're operating at a higher volume, and they get off the hook. And this is ridiculous. This Elizabeth Yusi, who oversees these cases in Norfolk, says she sees no probable cause to charge Letitia James with mortgage fraud. Well, what in the world? What other probable cause do you need? It's obvious that she did commit mortgage fraud. So this is the kind of stuff that our country needs to set straight, because the left was saying the last 4 to 8 years, right? Nobody's above the law, right? That was the catchphrase. That was the PR regurgitated line. Nobody's above the law. And that should be true. That is what the founding fathers believed. That's what our system of government is supposed to be. All men are created equal. They're endowed by God with certain inalienable rights, and that the laws we institute thereafter are no respecters of persons. They apply to everybody at all times. And yet we see people on the left and right, I might add, but more particularly in the light of these headlines, we're seeing it and talking about it on people on the left side, commit these crimes and then get off scot-free. So what needs to happen is these attorneys, these prosecutors, these people who are involved in this, who refuse to lawfully go after these people for breaking the law, they need to not only be dismissed of their duties, but they need to be pretty much rejected and shunned by society for not doing it. Because if the people at the upper echelons of our government, who take oaths to uphold and defend the Constitution and our laws, don't self-govern, don't uphold their oath, then they need to be kicked to the can on the left and the right. So that is what we're dealing with. And this whole rules for thee, but not for me, has been the ethos of politics pretty much since, I'd say, the Civil War at large from the federal government. And it has to stop, because it's this kind of nonsense that is making voters and the rank and file American citizens say, what's the point? Because I break any law, they're coming after me with the full force of the government, and no one cares. But the people at the top, they can break the law and they get off scot-free. So that is a complete indictment on the character of our country. And I really hope that these people, like this Elizabeth Yusi character, gets dismissed and disgraced for the rest of her career.
Yeah, as she should. If there was ever a time to actually go after somebody's law license and ability to practice going forward, it's cases like this where they're looking the other way, protecting criminals. And again, they're not worthy of representing other people in court going forward. And if this is the attitude that they're going to take of selective enforcement, that's somebody that shouldn't be allowed in that field. But, here's yet another example of similar behavior from a judge. Judge releases Chicago suspects charged with ramming cars into federal agents. So first of all, I want to know why only 2 of the 10 that did it so far have been charged. Like, what happened to the rest of them for arrest? The woman on the right is this Looney Tune Ma something or other. I don't remember what her social media handle was now. That's been doxing ICE agents. She drew a weapon and was going to fire at ICE agents. Some reports initially were saying she did. So she was shot, drove herself to the hospital, and got away. Basically, that was because Chicago PD prevented their officers from responding and backing up ICE. I don't know, Andrew, if you heard this call yesterday that was released from their 911 service, that even the dispatcher couldn't believe that she was being told to tell the patrol officers to stand down and not back them up. Now asked. Again, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out what's going on. And, I think whoever gave that order should also be charged with aiding and abetting criminal activity. She was told the higher-ups ordered this, and I really couldn't get a read on the guy that told her that or not, that this is what they were doing. It was a stand-down order. But we need to figure out who gave that. They need to be removed. The police union there has mentioned that. But again, the fact, to get back to the problem at hand, is these are violent offenders assaulting federal officers, and they're being released on their own recognizance until their trial. This is absolutely just ludicrous.
Yeah, it certainly is. And this is yet another instance where we see this lack of lawfulness, this lack of executing the law, and
politicized justice,
one-size justice, and it has to be said, Mike, that the reason we're seeing this isn't because there's just tons of lefties in politics. We're not seeing this just because of pure Marxist infiltration. That's certainly a big piece of the puzzle, but a part of this has been the removal of people with Christian virtue from the halls of our government, from the halls of our law enforcement. It was actually William Lynn, who was the first U.S. House chaplain, who said, "Let my neighbor once persuade himself that there is no God, and he will soon pick my pocket and break not only my leg, but my neck. Because if there be no God, there is no law or no future account." And what he meant by saying that was that if we as a society stop believing in moral truth, stop believing that there is a God to which we will give an account for our actions, we will participate in lawlessness. And that's why the founding fathers understood that going towards anarchy, going towards this sort of lawlessness where somebody commits a crime and then they just get let off, no rhyme or just let off, that is not something we should look at and say, wow, that's a shocker, because we're living in a system of government that was built for Christians to operate within it. And the Christians have retreated from that. So that system can't operate because it's being operated by godless people. So when I see these stories, I'm enraged. I'm like, how could you let these people off the hook who are committing these horrible crimes? And then I think, well, actually, we shouldn't be surprised, because the people running the show, the people wielding the sword, as the scripture says, talking about God's institution of government, those people who wield the sword aren't wielding it recognizing they will give a future account for their actions. So when I think of these issues, I try to think of them as Charlie Kirk did, who's behind me here, through a spiritual lens, and seeing that this is not purely the result of bad politics. It is that, but more than that, it's the result of a religious corruption that believes in lawlessness, that weaponizes the law for a new religion, which is progressive secularism. So that's what we're dealing with here, and it has to be corrected. And while it's being corrected, there also has to be a return to religious conviction.
Well said, and I agree, because we can't continue down this path of politicized justice, of a multi-tiered system. Everybody's been complaining about it for years. It's blatantly obvious, but the fact of the matter is, it isn't just the local judges like this that are making these horrifying mistakes, releasing these violent offenders out to continue to plague humanity. It's a lot of, again, people on our side at the DOJ. I don't think most people know that after the ICE riots, they dropped or lowered the charges on the bulk of the people that were arrested for assaulting people out in California. They reduced most of the felonies to misdemeanors. They dropped all the charges against the guy that was handing out the bionic face shields and riot shields from that NGO. So if our side's not even willing to stick to their guns and actually prosecute this, we're cooked. I mean, there's no other way to look around to work that problem out. Otherwise, the math just doesn't math. Like, we've got to be willing to fight and hold these people accountable, because the left certainly is not. And this is a battle for America's soul right now. Make no mistake about it. But if we continue to send the message that violence is acceptable, it's going to be tolerated. If you're on the left, if you're on a blue city, that it's going to be excused. Maybe you're going to get a slap on the wrist, a little bit of community service, something like that. Do you really go to an extreme and, say, firebomb a police car? But the fact of the matter is, I mean, this was a coordinated attack. This should be viewed as an act of terrorism. These people all should be prosecuted. I mean, just like a bank robbery. Somebody goes in and shoots a teller, they're all charged with homicide or attempted homicide. And that's how this should be treated. Every one of them, you're using a vehicle as a weapon. You're ramming ICE officials. Attempted homicide, no questions asked. Assault on a law enforcement officer. Charge all of them. They were all part of a conspiracy, and pull all 10 of these people off the street permanently. Because again, as long as this continues to be treated with kid gloves, it's not going to change. And I'm going to go ahead and pull our next headline. But DHS Secretary Kristi Noem threatens Democrat mayor and police chief face to face. She'll quadruple federal agents if they don't immediately crush Antifa outside ICE facility. So she was talking specifically about up there in Portland. But this is the same thing that's true of Chicago. Here's my big problem, though, and what I keep saying is, ICE keeps letting these people get away with it. If they want to go out there and play human traffic cone and block a vehicle, arrest them. Stop just throwing them to the curb. Haul them in, or it's going to keep happening. It's time for us to actually get tough and enforce the law, or nothing's going to change. These cities have already abandoned you. They're directing their police officers to stand to the curb or leave the area entirely. There's zero enforcement. And we saw this with Nick Sorter and Katie Davis Court, that they refused to charge these Antifa and instead charged, Nick Sorter, and I know they've since dropped the charges, but charged him with a disorderly conduct for having the gall to defend himself. If the federal law enforcement officers don't start actually doing something about this, the cities certainly will not.
Yeah. And I want to preface this too. The comments I'm about to make are regarding Washington, D.C. and these ICE facilities, because the ICE facilities are, of course, federal structures. So I think it's completely necessary for what Mike said to happen, right? If you are obstructing justice and getting in the way of these ICE agents who are doing their job, which is protecting the country, protecting the country's border, fulfilling the mandate from November, which, by the way, I saw Kamala Harris at Howard University the other day say that it was the closest election in history when she defeated Donald Trump, and that he didn't have a mandate. I don't know anybody who would say the opposing party winning every single swing state that makes it a close election, but that's besides the point. But this was the mandate of the American people, Michael, to have ICE conduct mass deportations to get illegal criminals out of our country. I saw a video this morning, Kristi Noem talking to an illegal immigrant who had snuck into this country 5 times over the course of nearly a decade, and who was 37 years old, sexual misconduct to a minor, so he's a pedophile, and this character had gone in and out of our country. So these type of people are real. They're in our country. They need to be deported. People who are getting in the way of ICE, getting in the way of that, need to be treated with the full extent of the law, because they are blocking justice. They are blocking the conducting of an investigation. And this happens all the time. If somebody in my town in Florida is getting pulled over by a state patrolman, and I interject myself into that private situation and I start distracting the officer, I very well may be charged with a little thing called obstruction of justice. This is a very normal thing that happens. And yet we see these protesters going even beyond that and blocking these police officers, not just talking with them, not just distracting them, but physically getting in their way, throwing traffic cones at their vehicles, attacking them. And yet, as Michael articulated, they're just tussled a little bit and thrown out of the way. Haul these people in, charge them. That needs to happen. Beyond that, look into who's funding those people to be there, because I would argue that all these people aren't just there of their own accord. They're being
Yes.
enticed, manipulated, or paid to go and do this. I do have a small concern about the federal government sending in the National Guard and sending in the military to secure crime in areas like Chicago and New Orleans and Portland. However, when it comes to federal structures, when it comes to Washington, D.C., these are non negotiable things. These are
Yes.
federal properties. It's the District of Columbia. And when you have individuals getting in the way of that, they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, because it's, again, rules for thee, but not for me. If I went and obstructed justice on a traffic stop, you better bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be charged with obstruction of justice, or at least it's going to be threatened. In these
Yeah.
instances, it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah, well said. And to your point, these people aren't just throwing traffic cones at these cars either. I mean, there's several times now where they've gone out with knives and slashed the tires as they're trying to pull in or out of the ICE facilities. Again, that's destruction of government property. They should be processed to the fullest extent of the law. And I'd imagine on some of these vehicles, the tires they're stabbing are not like the off-the-shelf stuff. These are run flats. They're going to be very expensive. So that already bumps it up to a felony if those were still over $1,000. Years and years ago, I worked at a couple custom car places, and there were a few times where we're changing out tires on armored vehicles for transport that were for rental, and those things were like $1,200 something a tire when I worked there. So I imagine the price probably has not gone down.
And what happened to the ICE shooter too? I've got to say that. Like, where did that story go? Right? Where was that guy's motive? What was his background? What was his deal for shooting up the ICE? Like, that was over 2 weeks ago, or nearly 2 weeks ago. What happened to that?
Well, it clearly had nothing to do with politics. That was just about social issues, as they like to tell us. Right. Same with the rest of these. But yeah, if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. It's time to amp it up. Stop making the threats and do something. I'm sick and tired of this attitude, and it's been my one real big complaint with the Trump administration this time through. And to your other point there, I go back and forth on protecting these blue cities and sending in the National Guard to prevent crime, to do a crackdown, because I would just assume if handle it the way Trump was kind of doing it before these last couple of court cases. Like, okay, fine, Chicago, you want to continue this high murder rate? You're going to prevent us from helping you end this ludicrous number of shootings that you have every weekend. And fine, just go to cities in red states. We can help keep the red states safer. And you know what else that's going to do? It's going to be just like when a state adds a concealed carry law. Criminals will move outside of their borders because the risk just went up. So if we can send these people to Memphis, and that and enough gangbangers and whatever decide, Memphis isn't a good place for me to operate. Maybe I should go to Chicago or somewhere else where the mayor and the governor will protect me. And they can just have all the criminals. Then we'll send in the National Guard to get all of them. Maybe we'll box in the state first so they can't escape. But I want to pull this up real quick, too, from Pam Bondi yesterday. I think she did a great job testifying, but I want to underscore one point that she made. Pam Bondi tears in a Democrat senator. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And that really, I think, just underscores the level of derangement right now. I mean, I was listening, I wish I could take credit for this, but I was listening to a commentator yesterday that brought up this exact point, that do you think Pritzker or the mayor of Chicago would be responding the same way if Biden was offering to send the National Guard in to crack down on their just unprecedented level of crime? Of course not. They'd be embracing it with open arms. They'd be celebrating the federal police presence, and I'm sure they'd also be using it to somehow push for more gun control. But again, this is purely political. It is an absolute embarrassment that our major cities have higher murder rates per capita than places like Baghdad, Iraq, and Bogota, Colombia. Something has to be done about this, but at the end of the day, Pam Bondi's right that they've so politicized everything. They're ignoring the plight of their own people because they hate President Trump.
Right. And we know that Trump derangement syndrome is real, right? If Trump, cured cancer, people would all be saying we want cancer back, right? So there is that element to it. And it was good. Pam Bondi had some great comments. I know she's forced to go before Congress for the advice and consent hearing, so it's not like she's, doing this of her own accord, that she has to go before these guys. So, when she does go, I appreciate that she does point out some of the hypocrisies. But, the left does have a history. And we just spent the whole broadcast, most of my comments are, talking about this whole left-right division and how, we don't want to politicize purely the left, and we got to focus on issues on the right too. But there is an interesting distinction to look at, that the right, at least the good people in it, there's a lot of bad actors, uniparty, people who are rhinos, etc. But
Yeah.
writ large, at least the right puts Americans first. And the Democrats have a long, long, long history of putting illegal immigrants, people who are on welfare, just that kind of stuff before, the tax-paying, productive, pro-American, patriotic citizen, right? So there's that conflict of interest, right? Where they're always going for the votes. They're always manipulating people and helping them when they can get the votes. And this whole issue with Chicago and Portland and New Orleans and all these different things. It's funny how none of these Democrats are saying, okay, don't send in the guard. We'll fix the crime, right? That's not the discussion they're having. They're not saying, hey, look, we recognize there's a problem. We're going to handle it. You guys just stay in your own jurisdiction. We're going to take care of the crime. They're just going over the crime and saying, like, don't worry about that. That's not real. They're fudging the crime numbers. And then they're going after Trump. Part of me says, when it comes to this, is let these cities just do what they're going to do, right? Focus on the Republican-run states. Make those the best we can make them the safe havens. And it's like the whole COVID contrast we saw between California and Florida, right? I live in Florida. It was obvious that Florida was handling and governing better than California. That resulted in tons of people moving here, unfortunately. I wish they didn't, but they ended up doing that. So why at least consider applying that same standard to this situation? Let's make the Republican-run cities, the Republican-run states, the safest, most beautiful, most clean places possible. And let Chicago, let New York, let Zohan Mandami, let all these people do what they're going to do. Let a few years pass, and then have a great I told you so moment. But if we come in and start fixing this, and I lived in St. Louis for a long time, I know exactly how it works, where the prosecutors, let people off the hook. There's no justice, the Soros-funded AGs, all that kind of stuff. Totally get it. I'm there. I get it. But sending in the guards, sending in the military for a couple of weeks or a month, it might lower the numbers for the couple of weeks or month you're there, but it's not going to fix the root problem, which is that the constituencies and the people in these cities have been indoctrinated through public education, through media, through NPR, through PBS, through mainstream media, formerly known as mainstream media, to elect people who are anti-law and order, who are anti-America first. And you get what you pay for, right? So I'm torn on this, Mike. Part of me just wants them to let them have their own devices and hang themselves by their own petard. And then the other part of me is like, hey, the government says to protect life, liberty. And if we can't protect these people's lives because of lawlessness, then what's the point? So I'm torn, but I have to throw that out there for at least people's consideration.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it, because at the end of the day, there are some good people in these cities. They are Americans, and I do think a lot of this is the result of indoctrination through our public schools and through their leftist governments. And some of them do deserve a way out. That's the problem.
Maybe they need to move. I know that sounds horrible, but maybe all the good people just need to move out.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's something that it'd be nice if we had the funding the left does to set up something like that. Like, hey, if you want to leave one of these blue cities, it's a cesspool. If you want to leave Chicago, and pledge, sign our pledge not to vote for Democrat policies where you move to, we'll help fund your rent with X number, or your move with X number of dollars. We'll have the U-Haul coupons or whatever. Yeah, exactly. There you go. We'll help you leave this cesspool. Just don't bring the broken politics with you. Guys, we do need to take a quick break here from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back with even more.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Life can be pretty unpredictable, filled with good days and not so good days. And sometimes, the only difference between the two is your level of preparedness. The Jace case lets you be better prepared for whatever comes your way. It contains antibiotics and other prescription medications so that you aren't caught unprepared. With a Jace case, you are able to get your prescription medication before the unpredictable happens, allowing you to turn those not so good days into great ones. Go to jace.com now and get your own Jace case.
Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the great programs here on X America News is by supporting our sponsors. So I would like to strongly encourage you guys to go to jace.com or jacemedical.com. Use code insurrection for an additional discount and pick up a Jace case for yourself and your family. This isn't a Band-Aid kit or a boo-boo box. This contains antibiotics, non-narcotic pain relievers, steroids, and other prescription medication that could be necessary or even life-saving if you're in a situation where help isn't on the way. So whether you're concerned about, financial meltdown, I don't know, alien invasion from 3i Atlas or whatever else, or just China cutting off our supply to medication right now, that's a real possibility if they decide to make a move on Taiwan or something else happens. This is a way you can have something on hand to protect yourself, protect your family. Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. Jace also offers a wide variety of other kits on their website, from parasite cleanses to kits that deal with specific illnesses or allergies, and things like blowout kits in case you want to have a real first aid kit, something to deal with a traumatic injury like a gunshot wound, major bleeding event, something like that. That little Johnson & Johnson $20 plastic box you pick up at Walmart is not really going to be able to help you with a situation like that. This is a small investment now in your family's future. So go to jace.com or jacemedical.com. Use code insurrection for an additional discount, and it'll help us to continue to bring you the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. We got one more story kind of in this vein, then we're going to shift topics, but I want to get to this too. J.B. Pritzker tells Rachel Maddow Trump is going to use the military to steal ballot boxes during the 2026 midterms. And he's not the only moonbat that was saying this yesterday. This is the talking point must have come out from up on high, because they were also discussing this on The View yesterday. Now, again, I wish we had the Trump that the left keeps painting him as, that this was a real possibility, something they had to be concerned about. But, if we had the demon Trump, the left likes to always paint, our country would be in such a better place right now. Even the threat of this, they'd be acting differently. Not that I want Trump stealing ballot boxes. He's not going to.
Right. And he wouldn't use the military to steal ballot boxes. But this does show just the lunacy of these folks that, obviously they stole ballot boxes. The 2020 election was rigged. Election rigging goes all the way back to John F. Kennedy, and before that, I believe that election was probably stolen from Nixon. Luckily, JFK wasn't that bad, so it didn't end up being a huge issue. But this is something that we do have to deal with, and it's hilarious that you see this communist tactic being played. And if you want to know that a deep state is real, or that these people are actively working and conspiring, you do have to pay attention to the talking points, because as you said, J.B. Pritzker says this to Rachel Maddow. The View's talking about this. This is such an absurd thing. I'd never even thought of this possibility. It didn't even enter my mind. And I live, breathe, and think politics all the time. So the fact that these people are saying this in a coordinated campaign does show you that they're getting instructions and talking points and lines and playing on people's ignorance. That's ultimately what it is, right? Is they want to come out and say, hey, Trump's going to use the military to steal ballots, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, right? Who's going to steal ballots? And all the while they're stealing ballots, right? They're not using the military to do it, at least to my knowledge. But yeah, this is a classic Saul Alinsky Democrat Marxist tactic, where you accuse people of what you're doing, make it a little bit more ridiculous, right, than it actually is, and then you prey on people's ignorance and hope they take the bait.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me of something there. In 2020, there's pretty good evidence that the left stole military ballots in a number of different cities, that they come in through an electronic system. I'm blanking out on what that's called for overseas ballots. But miraculously, you had several cities where 100% of their votes came in for Biden. Yeah, look at that. A military that overwhelmingly normally votes for conservatives and Republicans. Magically, in a handful of cities, 100% of their ballots came in for Biden. And I'm not talking like they had 3 ballots and it's something, you could make a reasonable case that could happen. No, we're talking hundreds of ballots. It's an absolute improbability. It just can't happen. But yeah, I mean, the my bigger fear here is, when you have Pritzker and the Harpies at The View all saying this, that they're going to steal the next election. They have been repeating it, that this is just going to spin up more of these insane blue-haired moonbats that are attacking ICE, killing people like Charlie Kirk, attacking conservatives because they believe this nonsense. It's coming from people that have a certain amount of credibility attached to their name, even though they don't deserve it. You don't think of your governor of a state like outright making up nonsense like this and then saying it on a national TV program. This is something that would be unheard of, not even that long in our past. If he had said something like this in the 1980s, even the dinosaur media wouldn't be out there defending it. They'd be like, oh, this is insane. That's clearly not going to happen. Again, they might be begrudgingly defending Trump in an instance like that, but even they would step in with this lunacy. Instead, they're the ones purveying it on the people and pretending there's validity to it. We've got to end this, or we're going to have more people like this. I mean, this guy, man arrested outside D.C. church, had 200 explosives and manifesto targeting Catholics, ICE, and Supreme Court, and the Jews. And this is the guy that shut down this mass. They had to cancel this pre-session mass that the Supreme Court normally attends because this guy was caught out front with Molotovs and everything else. Now, thank God he was caught and he couldn't do anything beforehand. But it's people like this. This is what people like this are the ones that are spun up by this lunacy. Same with this now transvestite guy that wanted to go murder Kavanaugh that we've been talking about, that the judge feels sorry for him now that he's trans. So he's only getting 8 years in jail. Luckily, it's not going to be served in a women's prison, so I guess he won't be able to commit any additional rapes. But this is the result of what happens when you're blatantly lying, trying to paint your opponents as fascist, Hitler, and all that other stuff. Not to mention, Pritzker the other day went off because the Democrats are getting called fascists now in some cases, and said that's going to lead to violence. So, I mean, they know exactly what they're doing when they do this. This is intentional.
Yeah, it was William Shakespeare who actually said, suit the action to the word and the word to the action, right? So when you say something and you put something out there, there's a potential reaction to it or an action that's going to follow it. And the same is true with your actions, right? Those are going to there's a cause and effect. And what the left has done for years, and people on the right too, the rhinos, the neocons, the establishment, the uniparties, the infiltrators, they have used this violent rhetoric. And they've said these people are Nazis, right? These people are literally Hitler. They're going to come for your rights. They're going to come for you in all these different ways. And they spur violence, right? There's all these clips. Remember Maxine Waters speaking to the protesters. If you see Trump supporters, get in their face, cause issues, right? The other Democrat organizer, when they go low, we kick them, right? These violent phrases. These are things that actually lead people to violence. These words are actually inciting violence. And I've been reading, Mike, I'm reading it right now. I'm about halfway through George Orwell's 1984. I'd never actually read it.
Great book.
Halfway through it right now. And what I've learned from that, it's articulated a truth that I already just instinctively knew was real, was that people actually are very manipulative, are manipulative and easy to manipulate. If you put people through generations of government indoctrination, if you control the books, if you control the media, if you control everything people consume, you do actually end up then controlling who they are, their character, and their actions. Now, there's a way out of that, of course. I would argue that the best way out of that, and the only way out of that's through the salvation of Jesus Christ, right? That's the ultimate, escape from the matrix, having the word of God completely renew and transform your mind. So that is possible, but we are dealing with people who are actually being fully indoctrinated and fully convinced that people of a right-wing political persuasion are Nazis or communists or coming for your rights. So we shouldn't be surprised after decades of this sort of propaganda that people would take up arms, that they would become violent, that they would become militant, especially when you have these groups like the transgender community who are being actively told through TikTok, through social media manipulation, that people want to kill you for your identity or people want to kill you because you're trans. These are people who are already mentally unstable because they don't accept reality. They think they're a different gender. And then you
Yeah.
tell them that people are going to kill you for that. Don't be surprised when they act in a militant way. And now this guy, from what we can tell, wasn't trans or anything. But the
Not
same
yet, anyway.
propaganda, yeah, not yet anyway, but the same propaganda does apply, that these people, and I think on the right, we often say, well, maybe this is like some sort of CIA MK Ultra, this person was contacted. And in some cases that might be true. But I do think we are dealing with just a broader reality that people are being manipulated. They're being indoctrinated. They're being told that people on the right actually want to take away your rights. They want to harm you. They want to separate families. They want to do all this horrible stuff. And then they're like, oh my gosh, we got to stop this. So that is a part of what we're dealing with. And I wish that some of these Democrat politicians would just talk about their policies and all this kind of stuff, even though they're wrong and all that. I wish they would just stick to that instead of inciting violence. But unfortunately, that is the policy. Violence is the policy. This sort of culture revolution is the policy. So, Charlie Kirk said, I watched a video and I'm not going to quote him directly because I don't want to butcher it and I can't remember it. But what he said is the radical left at this point in time in 2025 really is pushing violence. And it's not just a consequence of what they're saying. That is the policy. The policy is violence. And that's not a disagreement. That's just unacceptable. You can't push
Agreed.
violence. You can't push this sort of rhetoric. So there has to be a social consequence to this. And I hope that these people who have been calling for this for years are outcasted from society, like Maxine Waters, for example.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I just don't see that happening with the left. They,
No.
I don't think we're gonna have time to get to it, but they're continuing to embrace Jay Jones. None of our mainstream media is covering the story. And yeah, you don't need a CIA mind control program when you have this kind of propaganda coming out from our media constantly. They really need to pass this Charlie Kirk Act to reinstate the Smith-Mundt Act so that our government's no longer allowed to propagandize Americans again, because this is the outcome to that. When they're manipulating social media and our media to either cover up stories they don't want coming forward or manipulate the facts to create the narrative that they want, even if they know they're going to get caught 6 months later. The damage is already done. The election has already taken place. The wacko birds are already in office. And that's really what they want. And, here's another clear example of that. For as much as they're crying right now about weaponized justice and spying and everything else from Trump, they've been caught in the act multiple times, but they never come face to face with the reality. There is zero accountability from our media. They always dismiss this stuff like it's old news. It doesn't matter when it's the left, and when it's the right, they pretend like it's a constitutional crisis, even when the right is not doing anything near the same veracity. We're targeting criminals for crimes we know they committed, where they were illegally spying, and in this case on 9 GOP lawmakers and their staff. By the way, this headline, Blaze usually do a pretty good job. You missed out on this headline because I've seen interviews with a couple of them that found out, their conversations were also being wrapped up in this. Worse than Watergate, Republicans demand answers after documents reveal FBI spied on 9 GOP lawmakers. And Trump slams deranged Jack Smith after bombshell memo exposes FBI spying on GOP senators. And let's not forget, this was all under that same operation that they were using to spy on Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, and I think it was 92, might have been 91 other conservative organizations. This was all part of Arctic Frost. So if that isn't political weaponization, then I don't know what is. But again, this is par for the course, and the media continues to excuse this kind of behavior.
Yep, exactly. And the media is complicit in this. And that's why broadcasts like this and broadcasts like American Made and what we're doing at Liberty Sentinel and the New American is so important, because again, you are what you consume. You are the information that you allow yourself to consume, and that ends up impacting your worldview. And unless and until we break away from that matrix, this stuff's going to continue.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and bring these couple more headlines into this to back this up again. Trader Joe's team blocked CIA from distributing report on Hunter Biden's Ukraine business dealings. So yes, alleged Ukrainian energy expert. So this was back before the 2016 election that this was going on. And actually, I'm going to bring up another piece that I'm going to be doing a little more digging into exactly what happened here and come back with some more information, because I did see this yesterday. I had a crazy busy day, so I've not been able to go through this full interview and all the information yet, just a few summaries. But the truth is coming out. Russian President Special Envoy Biden provoked the war in Ukraine to cover up his family's corruption. And this is sort of in line with what we saw anyway. When Trump started asking questions about Biden's involvement in Ukraine, you know, the first impeachment, where they acted like this is just unfounded and unheard of, and that investigating anybody on the other side was just unheard of, impossible. This was the politics of hate. Well, there appears to be a lot more. Well, we already knew there was truth to it, but there appears to be more to this story than what we'd heard previously, and it does kind of line up with, again, so, you know, how often is it now that the conspiracy theories are really just the coming attractions? They're going to be the truth in 6 months. This is something that we'd heard before, but now we may have some confirmation. I hope they're providing some additional details, but I really do want to go through this because I do think that was part of what spurred it on, because it isn't just Hunter Biden. We got to remember Mitt Romney's son, Nancy Pelosi's son, and other politicians also had similar positions on no-show jobs on the boards of Ukrainian energy companies. And this, everybody knows it. That was funneling money back to these powerful political families to gain favor. And that is, we've also heard, you know, there was an extensive money laundering operation going on within Ukraine prior to this war starting up, and that all needs to be exposed as well.
Yeah, exactly. And this Ukraine war thing is, you know, just another example of the failure of U.S. foreign intervention, excuse me, where we're not intervening for American interest. We're actually intervening for the political, personal, and financial gain of a select few bureaucrats who are operating on the world stage using their office for nefarious political purposes. And I'd actually never thought of that before, that Biden maybe spur on the Ukraine war to cover up Hunter's workings with the was it a gas company or oil company
gas
in Ukraine?
Yes. Yeah,
Burisma
he was working on the board of Burisma, getting, I think it was $89,000 a month to supply his insightful information as a Ukrainian energy expert. And
right, which is
expert.
A big part of his portfolio. He's also a very accepted artist, and he does a lot of, you know, art. Maybe they were hanging it in the Burisma offices, right? But yeah, this is absolutely absurd, and it reminds me, Mike, of the episode we just did on my show talking about oaths of office, right? And if these people actually had a true understanding of their oath of office, it would eliminate this sort of tomfoolery. So that is very important to note as well.
Yeah, you know, I would have a certain amount of respect for a politician that would actually let their son or daughter face justice and not intervene in the middle. But today, that's just that's normal. That shouldn't be the case. I keep you know, one of these like stupid stories I heard in the past, it keeps bouncing around in my brain. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but the first black Texas Ranger at one point had to arrest his own son. And when he was asked about it afterwards, he said his comments were basically, "I raised that boy better than that, and he should have known not to do." And I wish I could remember again, like the details of the story, like what he'd done.
Is that Leroy Young Jr.?
That could be. I meant to actually look it up because, yeah, for whatever reason, that story keeps going in my head for the last couple of days for some reason. But yeah, you know, there used to be a certain level of integrity, whether you're in an appointed position, an elected official. You know, you would stand down if there was direct involvement that implicated a family member or a close personal friend. This is why judges, you know, until recently would recuse themselves when there was a conflict of interest. But now apparently that doesn't matter if you're suing the Trump administration to, you know, protect illegal alien criminals. Well, I want to get to the story you sent over, so I guess we'll skip the unhappy drag queens for now. But FDA approves new generic abortion pill. So what the hell is going on over here?
Yeah, this is a story from the New American Magazine written by a colleague of mine, Veronica Krylenko, and she does a good job. You can read it at thenewamerican.com. And basically, the FDA has approved a new generic version of mifepristone. I might be pronouncing
Is
that
it
wrong, but
mifepristone?
mifepristone, that's right. It's a 200 milligram like abortion pill, and it terminates early pregnancies. Right, this is a way to basically do an at-home abortion. Right, so this is insane. We're supposed to be a country that protects life, liberty, and property. Allegedly, the Supreme Court sent abortion back to the states. At least that's what we're told with the
Yeah.
overturning of Roe v. Wade. And yet we see a federal agency, the Food and Drug Administration, which is under the authority of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, this whole Maha crowd, and they are now greenlighting this drug to do abortions at home. It's literally insane. This is completely opposed to an Americanist and Christian worldview. And it's also completely against all the talking points the Republicans told us that abortion is going to go back to the states, the feds aren't going to be involved, and that you have the FDA greenlighting this drug. It's insane.
Well, I thought I remembered hearing Kennedy recently talk about doing a real investigation into the other side effects, symptoms, and overall effect of mifepristone, or maybe it was a different drug that was the at-home abortion, whatever it is, Plan B. That they were going to do a real investigation into this, and instead we get this drug, seems like rubber stamp for approval.
Yeah, and I'll take this even further. The product labeling bears a boxed warning, the FDA's strongest alert, which says, quote, serious and sometimes fatal infections and bleedings occur, very rarely following spontaneous surgical and medical abortions, including the following: mifepristone tablets. So this is a drug, and it makes sense, Michael. If you had to take a pill that would then cause the death of another human being inside you, it might not be good for you and your health as well. So this is being greenlit right now, and you have to ask, is this in step with making America healthy again, or is this a bone being thrown to the radical left, culture of death, kill your babies, and then also the pharmaceutical agencies and the money they're going to make from this drug? And I think you have to ask that question. I think the answer is very, very unsettling. So it's not good. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that the move was not an endorsement of the drug. She said that it was simply following the law. And she said, by the law, the Secretary of Health and Human Services must approve a generic drug application if the application demonstrates the generic drug is the same as the brand name drug. To me, that seems a complete and utter cop-out, because we have drugs like ivermectin and things that were completely blacklisted by the so-called health experts during the COVID pandemic. And yet we see this drug being greenlit, even though there's so many questions about it. And even if it was, let's say, a safe and effective drug, air quotes, it's still wrong. The federal government should not be greenlighting pills that allow mothers to kill their own. It's insane.
Agreed. And yeah, that definitely seems like a cop out to me. Again, take a stand, grow some balls, you guys. Otherwise,
Correct.
Nothing's going to change. Well, I want to end on a positive note. Steak and Shake goes full Patriot mode with massive American flags and Charlie Kirk tributes. So yeah, at most of their locations, they're going to put up the largest U.S. flags local laws allow, and they sponsored numerous billboards around the country now honoring Charlie Kirk and his memory. And I like their other series of billboards before this, poking fun at, what do you call it? At Cracker Barrel for all their political missteps rebranding. But yeah, again, I want to shout out Steak and Shake. They've also been part of the Maha movement. They switched, stopped using seed oil, switched over to using tallow for their fries. And, these are the kind of places, if you're going to go to fast food, you're going to go to a restaurant, patronize someplace that is pro-American, pro-America values. We should be rewarding Steak and Shake right now. Like I was on the phone with a friend of mine the other day joking because I was going to go pick up lunch I think it was Friday, where I was just super busy all day, didn't have time to make something myself. But there's not a Steak and Shake close to me anymore. Unfortunately, they went out of business during the pandemic, and the closest one is a pretty good drive from where I live. But man, I'm going to go there this weekend. I'm going to go get myself a triple steak burger, some chili, and maybe even some fries.
Well, I'm jealous, Michael. I love Steak and Shake. It's an amazing institution. I go to one that's about an hour away from me when I'm in the town where it is. And it's great food. I've always loved Steak and Shake, and I appreciate them doing this. And this is a great example of what companies should be doing, which is, growing some balls, as you said, and actually standing up for what they believe, because this
Yeah,
happens all the time on the left, but never the right. So we need to be supporting them. And I will say on Charlie, in 48 hours, it will be a month since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And
wow.
we have to keep this momentum going. I can't believe it's been a month. I looked at the calendar the other day and I'm like, holy smokes, in 2 days it's going to be a month since Charlie died. We have to keep this momentum going about the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk, and this sort of stuff. The bulletin boards going out is incredible. I'm actually speaking at my town on Tuesday at a big Charlie Kirk memorial. October 14th is his birthday. So keep this momentum going. Keep remembering Charlie, because you are Charlie. They're going to do this to you if we lose this momentum. So I'm very happy to see Steak and Shake do that, and I would encourage everyone in the strongest possible terms to keep this remembering of Charlie and the passion behind it going.
Absolutely, and well said. Yeah, it is our duty to keep this momentum going. We need to save this country. We need to win in 2026. We absolutely have to win in 2028. The left has to be vanquished from our political discourse, when they need to be completely run out of town, run out of the country. Yesterday we talked about all these Antifa leaders fleeing the country. Fine. Stay there in Sweden. Get the hell out of here. If you guys want to go destroy Europe and destroy their politics, go for it. But here at home, we need to put America first. We have to start fighting for our values and fighting to win. Andrew, thank you for joining me today. To our audience, thank you for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear.